our first story. This is Damned Store by John Paul A. Deveza. The story I'm about to tell you happened a year ago when I was part of the kitchen crew at an old restaurant on Timog Avenue. At night, I could feel that someone was watching me, or someone would whisper in my ear, even though nobody was around. Even in the comfort room, customers would complain of being watched, and the scent of lighted candles filled the area. If you sat in the center cubicle of the women's CR, you could feel a strong presence hanging above it. We were preparing cake orders for the Christmas season one December. We have this old walk-in cheapak chiller to house the large cakes. When the delivery van came by at around 1 in the morning, I went inside the chiller to check the temperature. As I opened the door, I saw something that made me go pale, and my hair stood on end. Lying inside was a balding man in his late 20s. In his right hand was a wooden cross. He held a knife in his left. I stood there speechless and unable to move. I closed my eyes, hoping the apparition would disappear. When I opened my eyes, the man was looking at me. I stood there petrified. The man extended the bloody arm holding the knife and pointed it towards me. I screamed and ran. The delivery guy calmed me down. My crewmate, who had been working there for 15 years, told me I had just seen Roland. Roland was the guard on duty, and part of his job was to check on the cakes. One night, he went inside one of the walk-in chillers to check its temperature when he absent-mindedly closed the door, locking himself inside. The chiller could only be opened from the outside, and it was impossible for him to get out. He banged and kicked at the door, but to no avail. He was only found the next day when the delivery van driver and the manager came to check on the chiller. The police said Roland died of freezing. Some have said that as he struggled for air inside, he cut his wrists to quicken his death, hence his bloody hand. Since then, no one dared to check on the cakes alone, especially at night. Most of us have seen Roland's ghost, even after the store had been blessed. The end of the first story. Now I'm going to read the second story. This is Letty by Charina S. Blaza. When my Lola Yolanda was 24, she had a friend from Quezon named Leticia Gimps. Leticia hanged herself in 1955. Leticia, or Letty, was friendly, and she always had many companions. Every time there was an occasion in the barrio, she would be there dancing, eating, drinking, and even cuddling with some men. But as much as she was friendly with other people, she was the opposite at home. Cassava? Again? She complained to her mother. Sorry anak, this is all we can afford. Aling Tali, her mother said. Where's tatay? Father. Letty said. He's gone, anak. He went back to his wife in Saria. Her mother said tearfully. Curse word? Pambihira naman talaga si tatay. Letty screamed as she left the house. Letty never returned to her house, leaving her mother and her younger sister to fend for themselves. For the next 3 years, Aling Tali did not eat or sleep well. She was always worried about Letty's fate. She eventually got sick, and her neighbors brought her to the hospital. Lena, Letty's sister, took over her mother's job as a chick vendor. One day, Lena noticed a familiar face in a tabloid newspaper. It was her sister Letty. She had become an actress in Manila. When Aling Tali got better, she went back to work. She and Lena sold chicks by the roadside to earn enough money to get to Manila. Upon their arrival in Manila, they discovered that Letty was in Valenzuela, acting in a street play. They went there and watched the evening show. Afterwards, they approached their beloved Letty. Who are you? Go away, Letty cried upon seeing them. Leave me alone. Those words hurt Aling Tali, but she didn't give up. Every time there was practice, she would be there, watching and smiling at her daughter. Letty continued to ignore her. After a year and a half, Letty had become quite successful as a stage actress. All through that time, her mother would watch and smile at her. Letty wouldn't mind her, not even sparing her a look. But one day, she glanced at her mother. She was watching her, as always. But Letty saw that her mother's nose was bleeding. The other day, she saw her mother losing her hair. At times, she saw her pale and her eyes white. But Aling Tali was always smiling. Sometimes Letty would hear chopping sounds, which reminded her of her mother slicing the cassava. She would also hear chicks under her bed. Letty shared all this with my Lola Yolanda, who was her assistant at that time. Lola assumed they were just hallucinations caused by the pills Letty took. The worst, according to my Lola Yolanda, was when Letty told her that she saw her mother with a bleeding face and her teeth had fallen off. She was crying, but smiling still. Letty wanted to run outside the room, but Aling Tali was standing by the door and slowly approached her. Letty covered herself with a blanket. When she dared to look again, the image of her mother had disappeared. The next day, Letty searched for her mother. My Lola and Letty eventually found her house in Balagtas, Bulacan on Christmas Day. Letty's younger sister Lena met them. Letty asked her where her mother was because she wanted to apologize. You can never do that, Lena said. Nanay died 2 days after she talked to you. Shocked, Letty could only cry. Nanay was rushing to your set to give you a letter, but she was hit by a speeding car. Lena went on to describe how the blood burst from her face and how her teeth fell to the ground. Aling Tali died on the spot. Before my Lola and Letty left, Lena gave their mother's letter to her sister. The following day, my Lola found out that Letty had committed suicide. In Letty's pocket was the letter from her mother. "Take care, love, Nanay," was all it said. The end. Third story, Intramuros Shadow, by Alexander John M. Dugho. The walled city of Intramuros is a place where we can go to relax, have fun, or simply hang out. It has become a center of enjoyment. But Intramuros served as a battleground during the World War II. There is no doubt that many people died there during the war. And there is no doubt that it is haunted. What with all the spirits roaming the grounds? A friend of mine who was sensitive acts strange there. Knowing her abilities, I would sometimes ask her, "May nakikita ka, no? You're seeing something." But she would never tell us whatever it was she saw. The first time I saw her bothered was when we did a shoot there last semester, when we had to make a movie as a final project. We had chosen Intramuros as one of our locations for a night shoot. At first, I didn't know why my friend suddenly announced a cut. We walked over to her and asked her what was the matter. She indicated the video camera and told us to watch the playback. She replayed the scene we had just taken, and we saw that it blurred many times. The camera was mounted on a tripod, which immediately ruled out shaky hands. The image just suddenly blurred but returned to normal. My sensitive friend told us that it was a mist ghost. Maybe it was just some technical glitches, but none of us could explain what happened. But what really scared me happened last October 22, a Friday. We had received our class cards and we decided to hang out in Intramuros to celebrate. My parents were not keen on letting me stay out late, and so by 8 o'clock, I bid my friends farewell and asked them if anyone else was leaving. Oma and Dida said that they too had to go home and walked with me to the exit. As we climbed down the wall, Dida spotted a group of freshmen, one of which lived near her. She bid us goodbye and went with the freshmen, much to Oma's indignation, for she had expected Dida to accompany her on the trip home, and now she was making the trip alone. I volunteered to go with her as far as I could. She was headed north while I was headed south, and off we went to get our rides. We must have walked about 20 feet when I felt someone following us. I saw a shadow on my left. I turned to look and saw someone behind us that I didn't recognize. I didn't know why, but I just suddenly felt nervous about him. Even though there were other people I didn't know walking around the place, I felt strange about that man. When we walked another 10 or 15 feet, Oma looked behind us. I was surprised when she said that Dida was following us. I also looked, and indeed, Dida was standing there looking at us. Alma and I were both surprised at how fast Dida had caught up to us. I felt something wrong with the situation, but I couldn't place my finger on. Sinundan mo pala kami? So, you followed us after all, I said. Alma, who was still feeling a bit resentful, said, Sige, ganyan ka, Dida. Lagi mo lang akong iniiwan. You're like that, Dida. You always leave me. Dida just laughed her unmistakable laugh. Let's go, I said, and we resumed walking. After taking a couple of steps, though, Oma and I turned around at the same time to find out that Dida had vanished. If she had walked away, we would have been able to see her. I felt a cold chill creep up my spine, and I'd bet Oma was feeling the same thing too. At first, we asked each other where Dida could have gone, but feeling it was something we could not explain, we continued on home. The feeling of someone following us did not go away the whole time we were there. I felt it somewhere behind me to my left. Sometimes I would turn around to check, but we were alone. Only when we left the gates of Intramuros did the feeling of someone following us go away. A few days later, we asked Dida if she had followed us that night. She said she didn't, which caused my arms to break out in goosebumps.